Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Asta Sata Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Gaura Parimananda, Hari Hari Bolo, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Garanga, to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the 10th canto, chapter 71, and we're on text 37. I'm going to do 37, 8, and 9, because they just collectively kind of spoke to me. All right, so Antaha Pura Janai Pritya Mukunda Phula Lochanai Sa Sambramayar Habhyupeta Pravishad Raja Mandiram Antapura Janai Pritya Mukunda Phula Lochanai Sasam Brahmayar Hu Abhyutpeta Pravishadraja Mandiram Antapura Janai Pritya Mukunda Phula Lochanai Sasam Brahmayaru Abhyupeta Pravishadraja Mandiram Antapura Janai Pritya Mukunda Phula Lochanai Sasam Brahmayar Habhyutpeta Pravishadraja Mandiram Anybody else? Antapura of the imperial precinct. Janai by the people. Pritya lovingly. Mukundaha Lord Krishna. Phula blossoming. Lochanai whose eyes. Sasambramai in a flurry. Habhyupeta approached with greetings. Pravishat he entered. Raja royal. Mandiram the palace. So translation, with wide open eyes, the members of the royal household came forward in a flurry to lovingly greet Lord Mukunda, and thus the Lord entered the royal palace. So we can repeat. With wide open eyes, the members of the royal household came forward in a flurry to lovingly greet Lord Mukunda. And thus the Lord entered the royal palace. And so Jiva Goswami has commentary we'll share. Now the entrance into the palace is described. He was met by the palace residents with affection and joyful eyes, who moved quickly, Samba Brahmai. He entered the palace gracefully with his splendor of his attendants, Pra Avishat. All right, and so we'll go to text 28. Prita Vilokya Bratreyam Krishnam Prabhuvaneshvaram Pritat Mathaya Paryankat Sasnusha Parishasvaje. When Queen Prita saw her nephew Krishna, the master of the three worlds, her heart became filled with love. Rising from her couch with her daughter-in-law, she embraced the Lord. Purport, Queen Kunti's daughter-in-law is the famous Draupadi. So in other words, Queen Prita is Queen Kunti. Jiva Goswami shares, she had special affection since he was her nephew and the cause of joy for the three worlds. In expectation of seeing the Lord, she had previously gone to the main palace and sat there. Then on seeing him, because of intense prema, she was unable to rise from her seat, but somehow she managed to do so. She embraced him. It is later mentioned that Draupadi, however, was standing behind with bowed head out of great respect. She was present with Kunti, but did not embrace Krishna. Sabda Smriti also agrees with this interpretation. The compound Sasnusha is poetic license. And so text 39. Govindam grihamaniya deva devesham adrita bhujayam navidat krityam pramodod pahato nripa. Excuse me. King Yudhisthira respectfully brought Lord Govinda, the supreme god of gods, to his personal quarters. The king was so overcome with joy that he could not remember all the ritual worships. And Srila Prabhupada purport, Srila Prabhupada, by the servants of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada writes, as he brought Krishna within the palace, King Yudhisthira became so confused in his jubilation that he practically forgot what he was to do at that time in order to receive Krishna and worship him properly. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur shares that, overcome with joy, the king did not know the proper way of worshiping. And Jiva Goswami shares, though he was to be known only by words, Krishna was now visible to the senses, Govindam. He was most rare, Lord of Brahma and other devatas, Devadevasham. Yudhisthira respected him. Or, why are you so confused, running here and there? I am dependent on you. Enough of this attempt at worshiping me. Just sit comfortably and let me gaze at you for a long time. In this manner, in many ways, he was respected, Adrata, by Krishna as a king, Nripaha. He possessed all assistance to perform worship properly with all its elements, but he could not remember what to do since he was so overcome with joy. Sa Omagyana Timirandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And so, like, oh, to be that Krishna conscious, where, you know, in these amazing examples of these devotees, it reminds me of many things that we, you know, many stories that we've heard before, where you get so overwhelmed with love of God. Oh, I have one. It had ants in there. They were biting, so I took it off. how many great personalities, but in essence, what we're seeing is what love of God looks like, what love of Krishna looks like, and how amazing that is. And to me, always when I'm reading this, I feel like it's an invitation. And we see in these examples what real love of God looks like, to be so overwhelmed, that you can't even remember what you're supposed to be doing. Like there was that one devotee who gave the Lord the banana peel instead of the banana, and then I think also of the devotion and, the devotee, the lady that was sitting on the path waiting for Lord Ram, and she did that year after year after year, and the devotee tasting the fruit, wanting to taste the fruit before giving it to the Lord to make sure that it wasn't sour. All these acts of devotion. And so what that stimulated in me, and in part when we're looking at this purport by Jiva Goswami, where it says, "Why are you so confused running here and there? I am dependent on you. Enough of this attempt at worshiping me. Just sit comfortably and gaze, and let me gaze at you for a long time." What is the essence of Krishna consciousness is a loving relationship with Krishna, right? And these are all these examples of what it looks like to be in love with Krishna. So, at the same time they're giving us this window into this relationship with Krishna, they're also encouraging us to have this relationship with Krishna, or else why read this? As just some literature to read and then put on the shelf and never pick up again. It's to stimulate our love of Krishna and see what's possible, give us a taste of what's there. And so in going back and then looking at these verses, this collective little package of verses of Krishna being welcomed and everybody being so excited. Mother Kunti's there, she took the effort to go to the front of the palace, the front, and, sitting there anxiously waiting for Krishna. He comes, and then she's so overwhelmed she forgets to even stand up or what to do, and then finally she does stand up. And so I was thinking, that this is what real shelter looks like, of what it is that we uniquely have been given in this Krishna consciousness, and what that shelter looks like, what real happiness looks like, what real joy, what real contentment, fulfillment, satisfaction, all these things that are so fleeting in this material world. And I was thinking about this because my spiritual master uses this term called euphoria. And it's this thing where you want to constantly get new things to be stimulated by those things. And I was actually also scrolling on Facebook and came across something where there was a gentleman who was talking about how we're not attached to actually the things, but we're attached to wanting the things. And I thought that was like an interesting perspective because it kind of ties to euphoria of this thing of being attached to the act of obtaining things and thinking that they're going to give us some satisfaction. And then after some time, they're kind of like, meh, okay, so I've had it. It's like, whatever. And then, like a new car or whatever, it's shiny, it's new, it smells nice, all these things. And, but then again, ultimately, a car is just to get from point A to point B. What it is, new or old, it's really simply a vehicle for getting, from one place to another. And so, the key, obviously, in looking at this, looking at the material world, the key to real happiness is having a relationship with Krishna. I mean, and we know that, as practicing devotees, because that's really the key in giving us the ability to actually truly having, being peaceful and being content. Those only truly lie within having a relationship with Krishna. And so then as I was going through this and I was meditating on this, I was thinking about, looking at this particular situation where Krishna is going to visit, King Yudhishthira, King Yudhishthira and his family. And it, it's taking me, we're jumping back into the Bhagavad Gita, and was thinking the whole reason you know, we have all of this is in Krishna consciousness. Our whole life is built on the Bhagavad Gita and what happened, right? Because, and I'm thinking, I guess I'm correlating it all to also to what we're going, or, you know, looking at now in a, you know, global situation where there's wars popping up everywhere, where there's just, I mean, just things that are blowing my mind or looking at that. But the whole reason that we have the Bhagavad Gita was because of a political upheaval, of people wanting to have what they want to have irregardless of what other people's needs are. And that's not true spiritual welfare for every living entity, which is the whole point of having the Bhagavad Gita, is teaching us, one, that we're not the body, two, that our whole point is to have a relationship with Krishna, and three, how to get there. My spiritual master called it a map one time when he was giving class. Is the Bhagavad Gita is a map on getting to and directions to having a relationship with Krishna. And so, you know, I was thinking about this and, you know, the circumstances of Krishna coming to visit, and, you know, the cause of having, you know, looking behind all of this and, you know, seeing the abuse of power. And then we look at the main cause of that, you know, upheaval was the abuse of Draupadi and her situation. And she's there with Kunti, you know, in the background. She steps up and steps to the background and is, you know, humble obeisances when Krishna arrives. But then also, you know, so the mistreatment of living entities to such a level of degradation. And then you also see that one of the other main points is to show us that, you know, we should not default to traditions, because in the situation you look at, and, you know, it's not that we change the Siddhanta, we don't change the Siddhanta, but traditions have to change according to time, place, and circumstance, and there has to be continual adjustments to those, you know, in order and relevant to the outcome. And that was one of the things that, you know, when, you know, that Krishna was trying to show and actually correct through the Mahabharata war, you know, because you have Bhishma, you have Yudhisthira, you have the Pandavas, who are more than capable of taking care of Dhritarashtra and, you know, the Kurus. And, you know, more than capable of protecting Draupadi, but they didn't, because they were stuck to their traditions. They weren't looking, you know, past that to the outcome, to the real ethics of what needed to be done. And because of that, she was put in this unspeakable situation, right? And so the other thing, and the main takeaway, is understanding that there is only one shelter for everybody. And that was the other main point of, you know, when you reflect on what Draupadi went through and what her situation was, and that is that there's only one protector, there's only one shelter, and there's only one unconditional friend and well-wisher, and that's Krishna. The only shelter we have, I mean, that's my takeaway, and, you know, that based on my own personal experiences being in a female body, not being protected, being compromised so many times I can't even count them. My own father not even being able to protect me, not even wanting to protect me, you know. And so when I read this and I saw this and I understood, you know, I think there's some level of advantage to having a female body in a male-centric world, is that I understand clearly that there is no other shelter than Krishna, because nobody can protect me other than Krishna. And I think that's such a valuable experience, and I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything in the world, because I'm here because of that. And so, you know, it's ultimately understanding, again, that there's no one human There's no one man, no king, no politician, no one that can protect us but Krishna, but for Krishna. He's our greatest protector. And so when we look at these verses and how they apply to us, and how we can go in and apply these things to ourselves personally is always the question. It's something my spiritual master does when he gives class, is that he goes through and he makes his main points, but then he usually, most always, will go back and so how does this apply to us? You know, because that's something we're constantly doing in this practice of Krishna consciousness is, you know, again, we're not just gaining knowledge, you know, just material knowledge. You know, we're trying to change not only our head and our intellect and our consciousness, but we're also trying to change our heart, you know, to become the most compassionate, because that's what you see as evidence of your development of Krishna consciousness, is that you are so overwhelmed by the suffering of others that you want to make sure that that suffering ends. And so when I look at these verses, I'm encouraged and to think about, you know, what is it that I need to do? And I'm encouraged, and I was thinking, I need to find every possible way, an avenue to take shelter of Krishna. And again, we go back to what Prabhupada brought to us is that there is not one thing in living that cannot be utilized or turned into service to Krishna. Breathing, seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, smelling, you know, prasadam, taking prasadam, cooking to offer to the Lord, association, friendships, you know, support, all these different things, service, you know, reading, praying, the instructions that we get from our spiritual master, you know, walking for health to keep the body fit, and you know, eating properly so that it can stay fit to serve Krishna, you know, so that it can keep the mind sharp to think about Krishna, to speak about Krishna, to hear about him. There's nothing in the act of living that can't be connected to Krishna, and that's just amazing to have, you know, because that's what Prabhupada did, is he came and he shifted our whole perspective and our whole point of view, you know, 180 degrees, to realize that it's not about just obtaining these momentary, you know, minutes of satisfying our wants and our lust, you know, and only to be disappointed by the fact that it doesn't last for a lifetime, you know, what to speak of a week, maybe even, month, maybe a year, but, you know, that there's something in the example of these amazing devotees is the joy that they get, you know, of being so in love with Krishna that they get to, when they see him, you know, maybe they can't speak properly, they can't act properly, they don't even, you know how to do what they're doing, you know, to be that absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And then, of course, you know, we have the prasadam, we have all these different other ways of reaching Krishna and, you know, engaging in Krishna conscious, but we have the chanting, which is, you know, something that's major, and I was thinking about that just in context to, you know, everything that's going on, and constantly trying to remind myself, you know, of what real shelter is and what my real focus should be, where I should be giving my mind, body, soul, words, and heart. And I was thinking about that. Prabhupada talked about in two things of when he was in India and there was war and there were bombs falling, and his main focus was chanting, and the devotees also asking, if we go into World War III, what do we do? And he says, we chant. You know, if there's no food, what do? We chant. You know, if there's no water, what do? We chant. You know, if there's, that's, you know, because that's really, you know, we need that shelter in order to be able to survive. And that's where our real shelter is in Krishna. I think about that all the time. And so, you know, working on that focus, you know, and again, you know, taking this all in, because certainly it's to be encouraged to have a relationship with Krishna. and to purify ourselves. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about in the purport where Prabhupada shares that, you can't save the dress of a drowning man. You have to save the soul. But the thing, too, is that you also need to be able to know how to swim yourself. If you don't know how to swim, how in the world are you going to go in and grab you? And if you've ever taken lessons on life, saving measures of somebody drowning, etc., there's a certain way in which you hold someone, because otherwise, if you don't hold them properly from the backside and let them float, they will take you down too. Because if you grab them from the front, they'll be grabbing you and they'll keep pushing you down to try to get up. And so it's really important to know exactly what to do to save someone, and you need to be able to save yourself first. And that doesn't mean that you can't, do outreach or share Krishna consciousness before you're, a pure devotee. It's not that. You share to your level. But, the point is that we do have to save ourselves. And it's important that we do, because we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we do have value in our relationship with him, as does every single living entity. I think that's another lesson, is that there's not one person, regardless of their body, that is not valuable to Krishna. And because they're not, because they are valuable to Krishna, then what they have to share, regardless of their body, is also valuable. Because when you choose to try to shut the voice down of any living entity, you're actually denying Krishna's specific individual loving relationship with that individual. Because I think about that all the time, is that if we choose not to listen to certain voices, we're basically saying we don't value what Krishna has to say through that individual. And that's a complete loss. It's disrespectful to Krishna. It's actually offensive to Krishna. Because Krishna cares about every single living entity. And so, again, circling back and thinking about taking shelter of Krishna versus things that are temporary, and finding our place, encouraging others, because I think that was the main point of what I was trying to say, is that we certainly save ourselves and we become Krishna conscious, and we do have value as individuals, but also, realizing that every single person, every single living entity has value with Krishna. And so we want to share, because we don't want them suffering. We want them to have this same joy of being so overwhelmed by having a relationship with Krishna that, they forget what they're doing and, forget their thoughts and, what may be, proper or improper, but just, wanting other people to be content and satisfied, and loved too, because I think that's ultimately what's missing in a lot of people's lives, is that they're not actually getting the love that they want or they need, and so they continually look through that love through things that they think will be able to give that to them, and so they continue to get more and more and more, and they feel like they're going to be safe with that, so they get more and more and more, thinking that's going to shelter them somehow. But it can be lost in a minute, it can be lost in a second, it can be lost in an atom, a split, second, hundreds of seconds. All of that can be lost, but what's in the heart, in relationship to Krishna, can never be lost. And so, again, I just think about this and just being overcome with joy of love of Krishna and wanting, others. And so obviously there's the Sankirtan movement, which is the Yuga Dharma. But I also think, especially in Khandes, because there's been a lot of conversation about Varnashram Dharma, and I've really come to the conclusion that really, in the age of Kali, bringing people to Krishna consciousness, really, it's about yukta vairagya. It's about really engaging any individual according to whatever gifts Krishna has given them, because whatever gifts we have, whatever intelligence, beauty, fame, whatever it is we have, it's been given by Krishna. And so we should encourage everybody to utilize anything in Krishna's service. Obviously, there's some limitations, if you want to take it outside of the box. But, the main point is that you encourage people where they are. That's something else that Prabhupada talked about all the time is, don't change anything, just use whatever you have to serve Krishna. He said that all the time, right? Use whatever it is, don't change your situation, just worship Krishna. And to me, that's really the most impactful thing, because, at least speaking from my own personal perspective, is that when I'm encouraged to utilize my gifts, when I'm encouraged to use my creativity, when I'm, encouraged, by whatever it is that I'm trying to offer, then, I feel encouraged to continue going in my devotional service. But as soon as, we shut down somebody's potential voice or potential gifts, they'll get discouraged and they, potentially not advance in their Krishna consciousness. We always need to think about what can we do. And I see this all the time. I think, where this is coming from is I see this all the time with my spiritual master is, he sees everybody's, and especially mine, he'll see shortcomings. He knows those shortcomings, but he doesn't focus on that. He focuses always on trying to encourage people to use whatever it is, in their Krishna consciousness, and, forgiving the things that they lack. And for me personally, that's kept me going because I see it every day. I get up, but because of how he's encouraged me, I get up and I say, okay, one more day, I'll try again. And I'll keep trying and trying and trying because, so many times I default to old habits and behaviors and don't push past, those limitations. But he forgives me, and so I have the courage to get up and try one more day. I wasn't successful yesterday. I ran into this struggle or challenge, yesterday, but I'll get up and I'll try it again. I didn't do the right thing, but I'll try it again and again, no matter what, because I truly, based on everything that Prabhupada's given me, I want to experience that level of joy. And I want to experience it for two reasons. One, because I want to be self-satisfied and not have to worry about being satisfied in this material world. But I also, which I've mentioned probably quite a few times in class, is that I want to have that level of Krishna consciousness so that I see through that lens in my relationship with everybody else and not my own personal motives, that I'm take myself to a higher level of understanding. So I'm thinking it's 10 after, there might be some room for conversation or thoughts, but just encourage everybody just to look at this as an opportunity to find, whatever way you can to connect to Krishna. Because if you're experiencing any kind of challenge, you'll have, like my spiritual master said, the thing that he loves about chanting is that he can always have his best friend with him. So then just find ways to connect with your best friend, your well-wisher, and the one who's going to give you the ultimate shelter, the ultimate joy, the ultimate happiness. And then you'll be peaceful, and these things won't, potentially destroy your determination to keep moving forward. And I see so many devotees, senior devotees, which encourages me because that means that you've been here through the years and that you've faced all these challenges and you keep going. And so that encourages me to do the same, and then to look at each of you and see the gifts that Krishna's given you, and then, try to, and because you've utilized that and your character and developed your character in Krishna consciousness, so then utilizing that to try to better my own self, because I see different devotees have different gifts, and sometimes I wouldn't say it's envy or necessary jealousy, but I see their gifts and I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe I should work on that myself, and think about how I can, be a better devotee, and then also be grateful and have gratitude for the gifts that everybody else has. I think I've also shared that sort of in relationship to, we all have different realizations, right? And there was one devotee who had this amazing realization, and I was lamenting that I hadn't had that realization myself, and thinking, wow, I wish I could have that kind of realization. But then I realized the realizations actually belong to Krishna, and he's gifting each one of the realizations to the devotees to encourage them, to show him that he's actually really there. And so then that means, oh, but he just gave that to me, and so I can, learn from that and appreciate that perspective and that realization. So in a way, when we share our realizations, I think is really important, because it just shows us that Krishna's there and that he's the one that owns those, and we don't. And so that's another reason to share them, because that's how that gift is given, and that, we don't own anything. And so, I don't know, it's just like the whole thing of understanding, being humble, because that's what opens the heart for those things, to take seed and to grow our Krishna consciousness and, reach the edge of the material world, pop through it, and head towards the spiritual world, is looking at that. So I don't know if there's any thoughts or questions. I'm just truly grateful. I just have a lot of gratitude, and quite often feel overwhelmed, especially I think when I'm preparing to give class, because it just makes me realize how unqualified that I really am, and how important the support and association of the devotees really is, that this is, real family, and offers, real love and support, and, that's things that are really important, because each one of you reflect Krishna. When I think of or I see each one of you, certainly I see, a devotee practicing Krishna consciousness and that has a relationship with Krishna, and that your whole motive is to continue to grow that relationship. And to me, that's what real family is, and that's what we're trying to offer to everybody, is real family. And, again, I've shared many times my whole situation with my father, who still hasn't spoken to me over a table, or the lack that I was not listening to him. But we won't go into all those details, but still, it is a loss, and there is some pain related to it. But then I turn around and I said, but then I get to define what real family is. And my real family, obviously, is Krishna and the devotees, and, the people that are still there for me, my sister, my mom, and my dear friends who are just, truly amazing, and I've had them as a shelter. They protected me in times, when I was going through so many different things. So, again, it's about finding family and expanding that family, is the other thing that I really, truly appreciated about coming to Krishna. When I first came to Krishna consciousness and going to all the different temples, is that I felt like I was at home, and, it was familiar, and everybody was welcoming and loving at all the temples, and, and it just felt like you were at home, right? And, that's something that I was trying to look for. And again, everybody's looking for that home and that love. I think I shared once when I was in college, I went to church. I'd been out drinking. I, had a hangover. I was in church because I was like, I've got to do something different. There's got to be a deeper meaning, and I went down to rededicate myself. But the only thing I could say was, I just want to go home. And he was looking at me like, that's not what you're supposed to say. And I kept saying it. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And I think that's truly what everybody's going for, is to find a home. And that's what we have with Krishna, and the example of him visiting Yudhishthira and his family. And their joy at that, is to our whole purpose is to have a relationship with Krishna and then expand the family, right? So that they can have that love and that family and support. So, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, all glories to the Association of the Devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, Ki Jai. Thank you.
Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindanalaya Taksham Varhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalem Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham
Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachadine Nirvisesha Samyavadi Ashtacha Desatadine Saraswati Deve Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaura Bhattarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaura Bhattarinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Bhattarinda Jaya Gaura Bhattarinda Jaya Gaura Bhattarinda Jaya Gaura Bhattarinda Jaya Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo! Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Haribo, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radha Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Radha Golokananda Radha Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Shri Hari Nam Thakur Prince of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu She had waited to get out of her. She must have Gauda It's not founder Srila Prabhupada Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govinda Shamakun Radhakun Girigoda Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Kamuna Mai Ki Anga Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Samadeva Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanandi All glories to the assembled All glories to the assembled All glories to the assembled All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga
Chaitadarpana Marjanam Avamahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipanam Pranamritaswaranam Sarvatma Snapanam Bharmijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahadan Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Amitasmarane Kala 800 Shita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Anjani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunikjena Tarorapi Suhishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadishakamae Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Ahoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Vabada Pankaja Stita Duli Sadrashim Vachintaya Nayanam Gashu Daraya Gananam Gad Garudaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tava Namagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Nimishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarva